pale tulikuwa tunatengeneza katiba, kuna mahali ambayo watu kutengeneza vizuri, kwa sababu tunataka huyu kiongozi wa upinzani. Nimemwambia mimi niko tayari kusupport kiongozi wa upinzani awe na ofisi, na hiyo ofisi iwe ni ofisi ya serikali ya Kenya, yani the opposition party, ilipwe na wa Kenya. Kazi yake funded by the state, kazi yake ni kukosoa serikali.
Oversight.
Oversight. You know? Ili kwa sababu oversight sio wadui, oversight ni kusaidia serikali ndio iweze kufanya ile kazi ilichaguliwa.
That's President William Ruto. He was speaking on Inoro TV, our sister station here at Royal Media Services, on the 6th of August this year. And of course, he was speaking about some of those issues that could possibly be part of the conversation at what is now known as the National Dialogue. It is no longer the bipartisan committee, right? They've gone into Parliament and trying to legalize the outfit and of course, the outcome of those talks. So those could be some of the issues that are on the table for discussion. In fact, that's what they're still debating right now, aren't they, Sam? Like, we're still talking about what we will talk about.
Yes, that's what they were. I mean, they but this week they made some bit of progress, especially at the National Assembly, in getting a motion to entrench what they're doing. I don't know whether it's in law or the Parliament to recognize what they're doing. And of course, that comes with the acceptability of that process, but also the facilitation. And they're also hoping that the Senate, which is currently on recess, can be called back to at least consider this particular motion. But then there's that conversation about what are we talking about? Because the side of Kenya Kwanza has come up with some 5 items that also include the conversations around reconstitution of the IEBC, the creation of the position of leader of official opposition. I might interchange those words, but I think it's about the leadership of the office of the opposition leader. And other issues. They have been very particular to say that cost of living is not part of the agenda. But on the other hand, you'll find that the Azimio side says that we want to talk about IEBC. We want to talk about the question of the cost of living. Because they said that the taxation measures that have been taken lately have been of immeasurable impact on Kenyans, especially on the negative side. So again, they have a list of 5. So they endorsed, or is it embraced, some technical team members from both Kenya Kwanza and the Azimio to come and help them to thrash out what those issues are, so as to advise the dialogue team that these are the particular issues that we want to discuss. But there's still a bit of suspicion out here, especially in the political class. You find that a bit of the leadership on the Azimio side are actually calling names, saying that we do not trust the leadership on the other side of the Kenya Kwanza, saying that the leadership of Kimani Ichung'wah is the leader of majority. They don't think he matches the leadership of Kalonzo Musyoka on this other side. But when you put it to them, because you're saying, I mean, the two sides agree that the membership of the dialogue team would include the leader of majority and the leader of minority, both at the Senate and the National Assembly. So then what argument is that you do not want to work with a particular leader? But also the president, as late as today, he was in Kiambu and he's saying that he is not ready to have a conversation that goes into handshake. And he has told them that kaeni na hiyo dialogue yenu. So it's mixed signals, because the way he speaks in the field is not the same way that we are seeing his team members in the dialogue team. But they also speak differently when they go to should I say the top of vehicles?
Yes. I was going to say rallies, because that's what it would feel like at this point. And true to that, look, we find ourselves here at this point. You remember when we were at this table with the previous bipartisan talks that, collapsed, and we had the protests that followed thereafter. And again, we were talking about what we're going to talk about. And we find ourselves here again. What do you think didn't work with the previous talks? I mean, we talk in this country a lot. Every time there's a political impasse, we talk. But it would seem we're in the same space. We seem to be stuck in a loop, right? The former talks about the talks didn't even get to the talks themselves. And then here we are again with the same distrust you see Kimani Ichung'wah and Opiyo Wandayi when they're in there, speaking very well that there is, good camaraderie between them and there's good faith. And then outside, it's something else. So will these fail or will these succeed where the previous ones did not?
I think the best advice would be for one to watch this the same way you watch the life cycle of a moth or a butterfly and see the different stages from egg to pupae to
larva,
and then, yes.
Adult.
And you need to have that kind of patience.
Except Linus, we move from egg to pupa, back to egg.
Yes.
Larva, back to egg. We don't seem to...
Because that is possible in Kenyan politics. Now you can actually do the same in reverse. It can fly and then become an egg again. Which is, we've seen it in a very short while. Didn't we have the bipartisan talks just the other day? Do you remember the photographs from one of the hotels? There was a breakfast of... it was a four-a-side.
Yes.
Very, and people looking like, they mean it. Here is what I think is going on right now. These teams still don't believe they should have the dialogue. I think it should be put clearly that way right now. Because look at the tone outside. You can start with what you saw with the president today speaking in Kiambu, and what you saw the former prime minister speaking in Uasin Gishu. These sides still believe in talking while sniping at each other at the same time. So you fire and greet at the same time. It's a very weird kind of situation. But long term, what should we really expect? It's hard to foresee what will happen. But let's remember the players that are outside this process and who have expressed interest in having that process succeed. We'll remember just not long ago, there was a very strong statement from the church leadership, religious leadership. Religious leaders spoke and said, hey, we need to have a conversation about deep-seated issues. I think that is where the eyes ought to be. Because there is one thing we should say about the two sides, that is Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. These two sides are still having and dealing with the feelings of the post-election, the election outcome. They have not closed that chapter yet. The election is still running. You can see on both sides, reject
exactly a year later.
It's 11 months. It's almost a year later, and we're having this contest about the election, and it looks like they're still preoccupied with that. So preoccupied that it may take a second or third force to actually shepherd them to the bigger issues. And
who would that force be? Senator Chris Coons from the U.S., who is, famed for his reconciliation, role, has been to the country, in fact, just recently, a couple of days ago, right? We know what happened or perhaps didn't happen with President Samia Suluhu. But so who is this third force that is capable of ending this once and for all? Because you continue to see the rhetoric from the Kenya Kwanza side that they won the election, they won fair and square. You hear that from the president, the deputy, and many others. And on the other side, do we want to recognize, this administration as one that is the president, but at the same time they're embracing him, when he goes to the devolution conference. They seem to be torn on both sides, but it seems like, either side is still saying, we won, no, you didn't. We haven't heard anything about reopening the servers. But obviously the reconstitution of IBC is yet another one. Who is this third force, or what is that third force that then ends Kenya's elections? Because the election was ended by Kenyans themselves. There was a contestation of it. It was formally decided as Supreme Court. There's a government in place, and it's been in place. It'll be, a year in September. So who is this third force?
I think the third force will be any group or any person that will actually have a greater argument than the one presented by Kenya Kwanza and Azimio. Kenya Kwanza and Azimio are still obsessed with the election. But when you listen to the religious leaders, they seem to sound a warning that, hey, why are we here every 5 years? Why are we unable to get out of election cycles? I think that's the force that we are talking about. It is those people, individuals or groups that will see the greater picture beyond the outcome of the last election. Kenya Kwanza, Azimio are still wrestling about last year's
But yet they're not at the table, though, because this is still a conversation between two contesting sides. And I think there's been the push to try and expand the talks to have more people. We saw that a group of civil society actors who went to Bomas, said they want to be a part of the talks and that this should be expanded. Then, of course, that would be something else. It would mean something bigger. But if these are the two people at the heart of this debate, they cannot seem to talk, and they're the same ones at the table. How do we start to expand this? Or is it perhaps in the nomenclature of it, now that we're calling it national dialogue and not bipartisan talks anymore? Is that sort of an idea or an inkling that, it might include more people? I don't know.
It's very difficult to tell at the moment because, again, so Parliament is passing a motion. The National Assembly has already done that, and they have sort of defined or described what the intention is. But the leaders of majority and minority have already spoken to the issue, and they have said of the issues they will not talk about very clearly. But then other institutions, other organs, other bodies are coming out and saying that we also want to be added, including the William Kamket initiative to have more counties. There has to reach a point that this has to be put to a stop, that now we have an agenda, and I think that's what they're looking forward to hear from the technical committee. But in as far as, like Lina says, about getting any meaningful contribution or meaningful progress out of this conversation, it is something that Kenyans can only wait and see. But something for sure is happening, that there's a bit of sobriety in the country. But I've also seen the struggle certain governors have, especially governors from the Azimio side. When they're before the president, they say a lot of interesting things, including the governor of Busia, who was attending a funeral in Nakuru. Is it yesterday?
Yes.
And he was sort of saying of how for the next 10 years the agenda has to be developing the Monanchi from the ground. And purely that is the political agenda and the development agenda of the current administration, that is Kenya Kwanza. But you find him now, when he is addressing the president, even thanking him for enabling him or allowing him to come to Nakuru. I understand that he may have been facilitated to travel to Nakuru, the place of the funeral. But it can only get quite interesting politically. But I think also we cannot be naive to the political value this quote-unquote national dialogue is having, especially for the Kenya Kwanza administration, because it is coming the space for them to continue doing what they need to do as an administration. So in as far as when to close or when to expand it, I don't know.
Yeah, we shall.
And remember, it will be a game, shortly a game of outmaneuvering each other. So the smarter side will win. Let's not forget that politicians do have a lot of cards, some that are under the table. You have some that are on the table that you can see.
Some that are not even in the room.
Yeah.
That will be brought in later.
When you hear a senator saying, maybe we need to remove the term limits. Remember, these are conversations that you can only make possible through constitutional changes. And they're not far-fetched. That's how politicians think. If the numbers allow, they can have their way. And I think that's what we will see in Bomas, an effort to try and outdo each other. Remember, they've done that many times using small platforms like the IEBC. Remember appointment of commissioners before and even just before the last election. It's done in a way that, how do you get at your competitor? So this should also be seen from that context, that who will be smarter now?
Well, who will be smarter now? Well, one of the smart things that we want to do now is finish our conversation and it's been a great one. But I have the auspicious duty, in the absence of Jamila, to wind up our conversations. And today, we begin finishing with Sam on Sam Sense.